Welcome to the 15th episode of It Wasn't Me, a true crime podcast where we talk about murders that intrigue us. I'm Mercedes.
And I am Cindy. In this week's episode, a possessed teen kills his parents with a sledgehammer, slashes his 3 siblings with a hatchet and a butcher knife, leads the police on a slow chase through the suburb of Huntsville, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to last week's episode where the shooting death of a 16-year-old in a nightclub by a famous rapper results in a discussion of guilt or innocence. Fair warning, our podcast can be extremely horrifying and graphic, and we will use offensive language. So if you have kids, put them away for a while and join us for a murder. Also, be forewarned, we are passionate and always have been about true crime, but sometimes we're going to make jokes and laugh during our podcast.
For more information and links to our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, please visit our website at itwasn'tmetruecrime.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and please give us a 5-star rating. While you are there, leave us a comment telling us which murder intrigues you. And if you like our show, please consider supporting us through patreon.com/itwasn'tmepod. We appreciate our Patreon supporters more than words can express. Thank you so much.
So, hey, Cindy, how's it going?
It's going really well. How are you?
Great. How was your week?
It was good.
Yeah.
I watched a new series this week. We talked about Don't Fuck with Cats last week.
Okay.
So this week I watched, on Netflix, I watched the series Dirty John.
Okay.
Well, I started it anyway. Well, it's a podcast also.
Oh.
And I just have I've known about it. I just have never listened to it. So I watched a couple of episodes of Dirty John. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to the podcast. So I listened to the entire podcast of Dirty John. And I recommend that you do that because...
Is it fiction or nonfiction?
No, it's nonfiction.
Okay.
And it's seriously messed up.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Dear John.
Dirty
John.
Dirty John.
Dirty John.
Yes. And I also listened to Blood Ties, which is a dramatization, I guess you would say. Like it's not just telling a story, it's like they're acting it out. Like there are characters.
Okay.
And from what I can understand, I Googled a little bit of it, but I think that it's nonfiction also. But I didn't look too much into that. But that one was another good one.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Have you listened to anything?
No. No.
Noble Blood does have a new one out.
Oh, no. Okay. So I'll definitely listen to that because I do like that one. So, yeah.
Yes. Anything else this week?
Nope. That's it. Just, going through the motions.
Yes. I went back to work after my nose.
Okay. How'd that go?
It was very well received. Better than, I got a lot of compliments, even though I think that I look like Groucho Marx.
You do not look like Groucho Marx. Though I am going to get you the nose with the eyebrow glasses. I'm going to do that.
But I have the eyebrows already.
Okay. Well, they're not that bad.
All right. So what do you have for us today?
So today, Cindy, our story takes place in Huntsville, Alabama. It occurred on March 10th, 1998. And it was at 13005 Camelot Drive. Now, Huntsville is known as Rocket City. It's the home of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, yes. NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, and the United States Army Aviation and Missile Command. So it's a small southern town, but it's got a global community because people from all over live there.
Yes. It's also, my son went to space camp there.
Yeah. Mine didn't. We couldn't afford it.
Well, it was a field trip through their school.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice. That's nice. So the family that we're going to talk about, they're originally from New York, and they made their way to Huntsville for the dad's job. I never quite figured out what the dad's job was. His name was Jerry Franklin. His wife, Cindy, was a nurse. So they were, they had a pretty decent living. They had 5 children. They had 3 boys. They had 2 daughters. They were devout Catholics, and they were just seen as very nice people all the way around. They attended church. They were active in church. They were involved in the lives of their children. They had a 17-year-old named Jeff. So when the story starts, Jeff is 17. They have Sarah, who was 14, Stacy, who was 11, Tim, who was 8, and then Chris, who was 6.
Okay. Now, isn't there a college there also?
There is, but don't ask me about it because I don't know.
I don't know either. I just said that just popped to my mind. I think it's a big college town too.
I'm not super sure about that, but I know that the mom, she was a nurse. I mean, it's a pretty decent little city, you know, so there's a lot of things there. I'm not sure what college is there, so it's not too far from Birmingham. I did see something about the UAB in Birmingham, University of Alabama in Birmingham,
Yes.
but no, I don't know about Huntsville.
Okay, yes. I know it is in North Alabama.
Yes.
Because
Northeastern Alabama.
it snows there. I know that sometimes.
Oh.
It does snow there because I remember it wasn't when my kid went to space camp, but there was at the same school when he was a little younger, some kids got stuck there because of the snow.
Oh, well. And have they ever seen snow before?
No. There is a college there, but it is a satellite for the University of Alabama.
That's what I thought, yes. I wasn't 100% certain. Now, Cindy, as I said, was a nurse. She worked at a nursing home. And like I said, I don't know what he did, but his coworkers spoke highly of him when they interviewed his coworkers. Now, their oldest child, Jeff, had been giving them some trouble. So they were very concerned about his behavior. They would go to church, and one lady who knew the Franklins through the church said that she remembers seeing Jeff at church in early March, just before the murders occurred. And she said that Jeff had just a blank, distant stare that really gave her the creeps. And she was a nurse, and she wondered then if he was psychotic or even high. And most likely he was probably a bit of both, because he did abuse drugs regularly. He readily admits that he did marijuana and stuff like that. He said, I did marijuana and stuff like that. He abused his Ritalin, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but also other drugs like acid, cocaine, and pretty much whatever he could get his hands on.
So abusing your Ritalin. Now, if you truly need it, then abusing it would make you kind of...
It would make you go into psychosis, is what I'm guessing.
Yes, because it wouldn't necessarily be like a rush.
Right.
Because it would be doing the opposite of what, say, if I took a Ritalin, I would be bouncing off the walls.
So if you abused your Ritalin, it would just make you hyper-focused maybe and really...
Lethargic is what comes to mind for me.
Well, if you're doing it with cocaine, it would probably have,
like a speedball effect?
I don't know. Okay, well, everyone who knew him knew that he was troubled. Jeff is described as being just an angsty teen. Like, people just thought, this kid, he's wearing all black. He listens to, like, diehard horror metal rock. He speaks out against authority. Like, anytime an authority figure says something, he's just, like, spewing his venom.
ODD.
Definitely. Oppositional defiance disorder. Yes. Now, in middle school, he was a decent student. He was in band. He played the trumpet. He was a decent student until probably about 7th or 8th grade. So all through elementary, the first couple years of middle school. And then right around puberty is when he says things started to change for him.
Sounds like it. I mean, what happened, or when the hormones kicked in?
Right.
Something in his brain just didn't.
Could be. And then the drugs don't help, right?
No, not at all.
Well, anyway, his parents knew there was something wrong. So they started taking him to a psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist said, okay, he's ADD and he has depression. So he was prescribed a combination of Ritalin, Prozac, and Klonopin. And Klonopin is what, anti-anxiety? Is it like a Xanax?
Yeah,
okay.
It has a different effect than a Xanax, but yes, it's a benzo, and supposedly when mixed with marijuana, it will send you into psychosis. Into psychosis.
Okay, well, that's interesting. All right. So he had been, like I said, he was a troubled teenager with some rather deep-rooted psychological problems, many of which the psychiatrist said could have been hereditary. Now, many, many years later, after he's already in prison and whatnot, because he's our murderer, guys, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So if you read my blog, you'll I did write just a very tiny tinge about schizophrenia, but
yes.
One person said that she had heard that some time prior to the murders that the parents had gone to the court, petitioned the judge to please put him in inpatient treatment, and that he was denied. But I'm not sure that that's like a very accurate source. I mean, couldn't parents do that without a judge's order?
No, not where we are.
Oh, okay. So they
Where
would have to
we
be like
are-
Baker acted or something?
Yes, that's what it is in the state of Florida.
Okay.
So, I like a law enforcement or a metal
A metalhead?
yeah, metalhead, a mental health or some sort of like doctor. So let's say I took my son to the emergency room and he's spouting off all this crazy stuff and he says he's going to hurt himself or someone else, then and they see it, then they can call the police and the police will then come. And
But as a parent, couldn't
call the police.
I can't take my child to some sort of inpatient treatment center. And I guess it depends on what kind of money that you have, what kind of insurance and whatnot, too.
Yes, if you wanted to Baker Act someone, for instance, and I'm sure every state has something along the same lines, but
And this was 1998, mind
which
you.
they had that
Okay.
then, I believe. Like
Okay.
here where we live, they did.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
let's say my daughter or my son came home and they were acting crazy and they were just like out of their mind and they were hitting or screaming or they were spouting off crazy stuff or said I would just kill myself. If I called the police and said my daughter just threatened or my son just threatened to kill themselves and the police came and they talked to them and they said the same thing to them, then the police could have them Baker acted.
Okay.
I personally cannot have them Baker acted unless I went to a judge, had set out all this, stuff, and
Okay.
then a judge could do it. But I couldn't
I see.
Unless I went to because when that happens, they send them to a place where there's usually mental health facilities in your area where they have places to send
Right.
kids who are Baker acted
Yes.
or whatever state or city you're in. Unless you are privately paying for mental health
Okay.
rehabilitation
Yes.
or whatever.
So maybe they just didn't. I mean, they weren't well off people. I mean, they had a decent house and a nice little middle class suburban neighborhood. But according to this person, the judge denied that. And that was not too far before the murders.
Damn.
So I hope that judge has trouble sleeping at night.
I mean, we say that secondhand, but like, what if the stuff presented to him wasn't solid enough, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure he felt like shit. I would.
Right? Yeah.
Even if the stuff came to me and I was like, this isn't enough per the law for me to say yes, you can do this, and then that happens, I would feel terrible.
Yes. Because I don't, you can't get a hold of juvenile records beforehand, but I didn't find anything that stated that he had been arrested previously, or now I did see that he had been suspended a time or two and ISS at school, things like that. But, his friends knew that he had a problem. They also knew that he was into the dark arts. Now, the dark arts. Now, the dark arts that we're talking is not the Harry Potter dark arts. By the way, I was accused of being an expert in the dark arts because I know Greek and Roman mythology. Okay, I was. However, this is not the dark arts we're talking about.
Not that Percy Jackson shit.
We're actually talking about Satanism here. And a lot of it, he actually expressed an interest in Satanism and the occult, and all of his friends knew it. I mean, they're still friends with him.
Okay, so they weren't into it too?
Well, I don't know. What do they call that? Misery loves a crowd, or what? Who knows?
Loves company.
Yeah, that too. So they also said that he was doing cocaine.
Did they tell the judge he was into the dark arts?
Like I said, that information was like from a Reddit page or anything. So I don't really give it a whole.
It might have come out.
I don't say that's a valid source, but it was just something that somebody said. And if it's true that they did petition the judge, this Reddit source that I looked up was very interesting because I'm pretty sure that the siblings that were involved in this were actually taking part in the conversation. But we'll get into that. Yes.
Okay. So interesting.
So he's in the dark arts. His friends knew it. He listened to a lot of that screamo horror metal music.
Like Mudvayne? Have you ever heard that? If Mudvayne has a record contract, I could have a record contract.
Well, please don't. No. Please don't do that.
That shit's terrible.
He said that he was listening to a lot of, it's called Deicide, which I looked it up, which means death of God.
Oh my God.
And then Chiron, and I looked looked them up. I didn't listen to any of the music
I need
because
to ask my husband, Jonathan.
one thing that, like I told you about, that he was getting into prior to his parents' death was the Satanism. And according to his friends, he had been attempting to summon demons and use magic to improve his life. He became very successful at whatever it was that he summoned, and it took hold of him, is what they're thinking, and it wouldn't let him go.
That's sad.
Now, Jeffrey claims that he couldn't remember what happened that horrible night.
That's the devil.
And there are people who actually believe him. Now, when he was arrested, he said that his body had been taken over by demons, and he actually told police that an evil being with horns sticking out of his head and eyes took over his body. But I want to get into the murder, okay, before we go back. And this is kind of a little bit jumbled. It is. Now, one of his friends witnessed that a couple nights before the murder that Jeff was doing Ritalin, Xanax, cocaine, and Klonopin. And according to the source, most of the people there were tripping on a lot of acid that night.
Definitely cause psychosis.
Yes.
What little bit of research we have done, that would do it.
Definitely. And then when he passed out on the couch, the source that wrote this said that he actually wrote on Jeffrey's forehead, "I eat dick."
That sounds like something
with a
Sharpie. High schooler would do.
Yeah. And this kid said that he was messing with the dark arts, and I really believe it was just all the drugs he was snorting. So he was just mentally jacked up.
So he was snorting the Ritalin, not just
Yes.
taking it for what he needed. He was snorting it, and that apparently does something completely different and goes straight to the brain and straight to your blood vessels in your nose. Okay. And not, because usually Ritalin nowadays I think is like time released, so it's not just straight shot to the
Interesting.
brain.
Interesting. Now, another source said that Franklin did a lot of drugs at school, and he would keep them in his locker. So the murder happened, like I said, March 10th, 1998. It's a cool spring evening, and Cindy Franklin took her normal walk. She was out walking, and Jeffrey, when she came home, Jeff called her in her room. He had his music blaring, and he's like, "Mom, come here." And
when did she hear him?
Yeah, I don't know, but when she came in, he bludgeoned her to death with a sledgehammer. So when the police came in later that evening, they found
premeditated.
Yes. All right. Well, yeah, I guess.
I mean,
definitely, yeah. So when she came in, he called her into the room and bludgeoned her to death with a sledgehammer in his bedroom. Now, I did see where it was a blunt end of an axe or a hatchet. I'm not 100% certain, but pictures of the crime scene show a sledgehammer there.
Oh my word. Did you look at the crime scene pictures?
I did. Just the ones that they had. Just the ones that they had on, like in a media, like a newspaper article.
I'm such a freak. I would totally look at every single one.
Yeah, they didn't have any like police crime scene photos, but just the ones that were released to the
I would
public.
go to an autopsy.
Okay, no, I wouldn't. Just the smells alone would make me gag.
Well, we have. I have a crematorium in my family, so a crematory. So I threaten people with that all the time. We have lots of family members who own funeral homes.
Well, that's good.
FYI.
I want to be cremated. I want to be cremated when I die. Okay, family? All right. So now no one knows why he attacked his mom. No one knows, because he loved his siblings. Like, he would tell his family all the time, I love my siblings. I have the coolest siblings. But he never said any particular reason why he was angry at his parents. He just was.
That's
so
scary.
He bludgeoned his mom. She died in his bedroom. That's where her body was found.
Oh my word.
His little sister Sarah was also home, and he took an axe or some sort of blunt force object and hit her in the head with it numerous times. He also did the same with his little brothers, Tim and Chris, who were 6 and 9. His other sister was at dance class, so she wasn't home. When his father came home, Jeffrey was waiting by the door behind a hutch and also ended up hitting him with the sledgehammer, and his father died at the scene from blunt force trauma.
Good grief. How tragic.
Now, at this point, a neighborhood kid is coming over. And she's coming over to hang out and play. And she sees Jeffrey coming out of the house all bloody. Another neighbor happens to see another kid. One of the children had crawled out the back door. They'd seen the kid in the backyard all bloody. And so 911 was called in 2 instances.
Well, thank God for nosy neighbors.
That's right. Well, I mean, good Lord. Can you imagine seeing that scene?
No, not at all.
Now, somebody said that he was heading to the dance studio to go get his other sister.
Like that?
Yeah. But who knows? But what he did was he led the police. The police had been called. He gets in his car and he's driving through Huntsville. I've read numerous articles on this, and it was all a high-speed chase. But in reality, it was a low-speed car chase.
Okay.
He was going over, running through yards. He was going over, curbs and things like that. It was about 25 minutes. It was all over the TV. I mean, they were interrupting, local news was interrupting primetime TV, and people were shocked. And one of his friends like, oh my God, that's Jeff. And at that point, people are like, what the hell is going on? It ends when he ends up wrecking into a fence. And I think it's a dead-end road or a cul-de-sac or something.
Right.
Now, another lady says that she was in her house, and she says that he was on his way to the dance class to go get the other sister. This person clearly remembers locking all 4 of her children in the house, not allowing them to go outside because the car chase went through her neighborhood, and she said it was quite terrifying.
That would be absolutely terrifying.
Right? And a lot of his friends said, they had no idea why he snapped like that. I mean, they knew that he was doing drugs and whatnot, but he just totally snapped. It was just shocking to everyone.
While I would be terrified, I would probably be right on my front porch, like, what's going on?
Yes, right? So, when they got him out, once they stopped the car and got him out of the car, he was yelling and cussing and saying things like, I'm Beelzebub. He was like saying, I'm Satan.
Oh.
Whatever, he's spouting out these things. He was cussing at the journalists and photographers. He spit on one of them. He was shirtless and bloody, and he had carved in his chest. He had a pentagram. He had an upside down cross and a pitchfork.
Carved into his
own chest.
Holy crap.
Now, I just want you to remember this because I want to talk about this when I start talking about his little brother later on. Okay?
Okay.
So he's arrested, and 3 nights later, he's on the news again. He is quite penitent this time. He was remorseful, almost teary. He was not the same boy who had mocked his parents as they lay drowning in the blood, or had brutally attempted to kill his children, or his siblings. But he had a few days to kind of like wake up from the psychosis he was in, right?
The drugs wore off.
Right. And he was actually saved twice while he was awaiting arraignment and all that. Like he found Jesus in jail.
In 2 days?
In 3 days, yes. Yes. Now,
it could happen.
It could happen. I'm not saying it but whatever. Anyway, he when he was 23, now remember he's 17 at the time. I did watch an interview when he was 23, and he said that his favorite Bible quote is Romans. He was talking about being saved twice in jail. He's still a Christian. We'll talk about that later, but he said that his favorite Bible quote is Romans 8:1, and I looked it up, and it said, therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So he believes that all the sins that he has committed are wiped clean.
Not in the eyes of the law.
Right. When he was picked up, his eyes were huge. He looked demonic when they picked him up. There are pictures. So he's in jail. Police go into the house, and they discovered a notebook hidden inside of his speaker. Uh-oh. And this revealed that it was not only the devil who made him do it, not exactly anyway, because it contained many scenarios involving strange satanic rituals, sexual tortures, and it revealed that he had been planning the murders of his parents and later his whole family for months.
Wow.
So this is not something that was like spur of the moment snap like his friends thought.
Do you think maybe he was just pissed off at his parents and this was a setup?
That's very interesting that you said. No, I don't know if setup. What do you mean? Think the police set it up?
No. Like that he was smart enough to say, well, this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that it was like it was a big ploy, and he was just, I'm going to pretend like I'm just fucking batshit crazy, and I worship the devil, and I am a, sick. I'm going to say that the demons did it, and really he just was wanting to kill his family.
Well, it's interesting because the defense is going to say that later, and we're going to talk about that. No, he's not going to say what you said, but he is going to say something about the Satanism.
Okay.
Later in his defense. So, apparently he had been fascinated with the cult for some time. One of the investigating officers described the information in the book as very violent, with overtones of a sexual nature throughout the material. There are religious themes, sort of anti-God kind of themes that run through it. Yet it was what he wrote about his family that was most chilling. There's meticulous planning about how he's going to kill his parents, even tactically. So, for example, he writes, I know Dad will be home at this time, and I'll wait by the front door behind the little hutch, and I'll hit him with a hammer. Mom will be out on a walk. When she comes back, I'll have the radio playing loudly. I'll call Mom in the room and ask her what's on the agenda for today. And apparently that's what he told police happened. Says, then I'll kill her, and what about the brothers and sisters? Well, I'll take them, I'll strangle my little brother in this room, and then I'll lure my other little brother into the room by telling him I want to tell him a secret and strangle him. Then my sister, I'll rape her, and then I will finish her off. Now, he did not rape his sister, and he did not finish them off, but he did traumatize them for life.
You think?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the question is, what led this normal young man to commit such a heinous crime? And I use the word heinous.
I know you love that word.
I love that word.
Yes.
Because it rhymes with anus.
Now, while you were describing everything, I did go ahead and I Google imaged some pictures of this little guy. So some of the pictures that I pulled up, his wounds, I would say, to his chest and abdomen
They're just
area,
scratched in there.
they seem very superficial.
Yeah.
Like, it was an afterthought. Like, those aren't, I don't know. They're just
So
like,
you're thinking that this is all a hoax.
just
and
a bunch
he's
of
not...
bullshit, and he's saying that this is why I did it, and he was really just fucked up and wanted to kill his parents. He was pissed off at him, spoiled brat, killed his parents.
So the writings that he had for months and months, you think is just like a ploy?
He was just a dramatic kid writing some bullshit down.
Okay. So let me just say that he sat in jail for a while, and finally, in 2001, 3 years after the murder, this was the deadline. Like, because the courts kind of like have to make sure that he's mentally competent enough to stand trial. Blah blah blah. Well, he decides at the very last minute that he's just going to plead guilty. He pleads guilty.
Oh wow, that's
wow. So he pleads guilty, and it's kind of like a deal that he made. He was under the impression that if he pled guilty, then he could be out within 12 years, because the state of Alabama allows for parole after 15 years if you're a minor. So he was told that since he had already served 3 years of the sentence,
right,
that in 12 years he would be eligible parole. So this is kind of where I got a lot of the information, because in 12 years he petitions the court for parole, and this is where a lot more information comes out. So he writes a letter to the judges begging them to give him credit towards his sentence for 3 years he spent in custody prior to his sentence. In his letter, he describes some issues. He had some problems in prison. So he got moved to a minimum security prison, where he has stayed basically in the mental health unit for most of his stay.
Okay.
He has been written up for fighting inmates. One of those fights was with a much larger inmate that left Franklin badly injured.
Right.
Wait, or did it leave the larger inmate badly injured? I'm kind of confused by that. I don't know. I'm curious. He goes on to say that he tried to cut his wrists a few times. He also did a few like dives onto the concrete, landing on his head.
Holy shit.
So he was doing anything he could to try to get out of where he was, or to I don't know what his reason was.
He's so strung out on drugs. He was writing this bullshit. I'm gonna do this. My parents don't understand.
He's mentally ill.
Yeah, and he's mentally ill. Yeah. So all of this with the drugs, with the just everything, and he's writing all this bullshit, and then finally he goes to jail where he's not getting his drugs. He might get something that legitimately is issued to him on a regulatory basis where he can't abuse it, so he might be in his right mind. He's thought, what the hell have I done? So I'm gonna, Peter Pan off this top floor here. I don't know.
Peter Pan.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, well, anyway, as it turns out, the parole board didn't buy it. Yeah, they didn't, because they went back and they looked at the case, and they didn't buy it. When Franklin went in this letter, he willingly pleaded guilty. He says that he willingly pleaded guilty, but it wasn't really his fault because of the drugs that because of the prescription drugs that he was on.
If he was taking them and not
it left the larger inmate badly injured, so he went batshit crazy on a larger inmate. He tells the judge, "I'm not really a bad man. I didn't mean to do what I did. It just happened. I have a hard time."
Whatever.
And at one point when he was first arrested, he told the police, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was the devil. The devil made me do it." Now, his friends according to the defense, his friends and parents had missed the warning signs. No one knew it at the time, but Franklin had been awake for 72 hours prior to the murder. So 72 hours, that's 3 days?
Mm-hmm. 72 hours of no sleep, plus all of the drugs, plus the that will. Oh, that's a scary combination.
So he had been abusing the Ritalin, and his lawyers contested that it was a drug abuse which pushed him to the total psychosis. According to them, he had no idea what he was doing, but in the end, they did not buy the insanity plea. So so that was when I told you that he went ahead and pled guilty. Now, the DA at the time, the assistant DA back then, who was the current DA when he asked for parole, said, when you look at the nature of the crime, him killing his parents and the way he killed them, and on top of that, an individual who tried to kill his 3 siblings, including a 6-year-old with a butcher knife, this guy will always be inherently dangerous.
Yes.
And the guy said, I feel confident that no parole board will ever let him see the light of day. He's just not one of the guys who would end up killing somebody because of the heat of the moment. This was a meticulously planned event, and just by the grace of God, according to the DA, his brothers and sisters survived.
Yes, thank God, but they're severely screwed
Well, and I'm going to talk about this.
I'm going to say they probably have some emotional issues because of it. I would.
I'm going to talk about them in just a minute because they're still around and they are active. Like, they're still alive just like us and living their lives just like we are.
Oh, thank God.
Now, this Broussard said it was a miracle that they weren't killed. You think about you're the oldest in the family, you're capable of viciously attacking your 6-year-old brother, almost killing him. And this DA says that's unfathomable. And as far as his spiritual well-being, whatever, if he is a born-again Christian, that, like you said, it does not negate the fact that he killed his family.
Correct. Good for you. Your salvation is there. You're saved in the end.
That's right.
But you still got to serve
your time. You're not getting
here.
out, right? Okay, another, in his defense, somebody said, well, look what he did to his parents. He could have easily killed his 3 siblings, but he didn't. He held back. He didn't use his full force, and he didn't do anything to the puppy who was locked up in the cage.
Okay, this is all correct. True, he couldn't have, but he still injured them. Why? Well, he didn't have to. Okay, so I want my parents dead, but you don't have to hurt your siblings who clearly can't protect themselves a whole lot when they're they're small children.
Right.
I'm glad you didn't hurt the puppy too, but well, damn it, man, you killed your fucking parents.
Right. Well, it comes out later in court that he had been up 3 days before the murder, and Ritalin abuse, that was a big thing in Huntsville, Alabama at the time. He was
town. They do that there.
Yeah. So the defense said, he was diagnosed with ADD, but his dosages were being increased, and he had told the psychiatrist a number of times, look, this is not working, but the dosages were still increased. Now, what Franklin told police was that his mom ended up taking the Ritalin. She knew there was something going on, and she started locking it up in a safe, in a lockbox. So what Franklin did, what Jeffrey did, was he went in and took the hinges out of the lockbox, and he would take the pills out and stuff them with and take out the powder and snort it, and then fill the pills with saccharin without his mom knowing. He would snort 3 to 4 pills at a time.
What?
Now, blood tests done after, he still had 10 times a normal dose 12 days after the murders.
Okay. So, if he was doing that, then shouldn't he have been taking the saffron too? If his mom...
Saccharin?
Saccharin, yeah, saffron. Sorry. So if he was taking the pills, if his mom was rationing out the pills to him, so he was snorting it in the days previous, then he would take the saccharin pills.
Yes. But I guess at that point, when they went and looked in the box, they found these pills with saccharin in them. So he had 12 times the amount, or 10 times the amount 12 days later.
Wow. So what he did is his future doses that his mom would be giving to him were all placebo, saccharin.
Which also has, I mean, I don't know, like coming down, do you have like Ritalin withdrawals?
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It sounds like that he did all of it.
Yes. Well, and the attorney says that his attorney said that Ritalin was a major factor in the crime. It pushed him into a total psychosis. He was crazy. But the DA said he believes the drugs only exacerbated the evil inside. It was already there. This drug abuse is no excuse. Now, what you mentioned earlier, the defense also said that he's not really a devil worshiper. He was just rebelling against his parents because they were strict Catholics. He wanted to make his parents mad. So, this wearing all black and listening to screamo music and things like that, that was just an attempt to piss his parents off. After, like I told you, after his arrest, he quickly became remorseful when the drugs left his system, and he was stunned by what he did. So people were saying, oh, he was totally stunned by what he did. I did watch an interview with him. He said that God spoke to him at the county jail. This is when he said he found God. He said that there's a preacher that came to see him, a Carmen Cassiopa or something like that, who was a preacher. And he said that God pushed his spirit and went to isolation. He said, the Lord spoke, if you serve me, I'll take away your shame. So he was baptized twice in county jail, like I said. Now, in prison, he is currently right now in Bullitt Correctional. He was at Donaldson Correctional for some time, where he took his GED. He learned Spanish. He took drafting and art classes there. The prison that he's in now is just south of Montgomery. It's a minimum in, which means that it's appropriate for inmates who are not a significant risk to themselves or to others. The work assignments are on property, cannot leave, so there's no furlough.
There's no furloughs. Yeah,
no furlough for this guy. And it's a closed security facility, and it can be supervised by non-security personnel. He's still in the mental health block, but he is far from crazy, is what someone said. Said he was denied parole. Now, his siblings, like I said, I believe that his siblings are kind of writing on this online thing that I found.
Right.
But they ended up, after they finally were out of critical condition and were able to leave, they went and lived with an aunt in New York. So they moved back to Niagara, New York.
Okay.
And they're still young, because if you think 1998, the youngest was 5 or 6. So what would put that kid now?
24? No, 30.
What?
In his 30s. Because my daughter was born in 97. She's 22, almost 23.
So he would be
30, right? Give or take.
Yeah. So around 30. Now Jeff, on an online interview I watched, he said that 3 out of the 4 siblings forgive him for what he did. Really? They correspond with him regularly through writing. They also come visit him.
Hell no.
The youngest brother had the most damage. It left him, what do I say, disabled maybe? He didn't speak for a really long time. He is an artist. I actually saw some of the art he did. It has a lot of symbolism, a lot of murders from this symbolism. Like it has a upside down cross. There's like blood. There's like evil. So you can see that he still has nightmares. It's coming out in his art. Maybe that's a coping mechanism that he has. But they are all alive, like, and they're doing quite well. So, and I'm not going to give their names just because I don't want to. But let's see. He also leads like a Bible class in prison and leads spiritual groups. So he says, I know I'm forgiven. God has forgiven me. And he does miss his mom and dad. He says they were really good parents, but he said sometimes when I think about them, I feel guilty. He says they tried.
You should feel guilty.
Yeah. He says they tried to get him help. They took him to a psychiatrist, to priests, but nothing worked. He said that most likely the stress of his senior year just kind of like fractured his mind. He loved school. He loved going to Grissom High is where he went, but just the stress of senior year, I guess, is what he says. He says, I now believe in Jesus. Now, as far as the first responders, they said that this was one of the worst that they'd ever seen in 25 years. And all of them, some of them were throwing up in the yard.
I have a friend, a very close friend, who is a first responder, EMS, fire, and the stuff that they see is not, something that we should ever have to experience.
Right.
And I can't imagine. I mean, because it's day in, day out.
Right.
And, sometimes they're slow and they don't, because I know where we are, our firefighters are first responders. They're there before the police are there.
Yes.
And they see, they're getting shot at these days. So, I mean, I can't imagine.
And my son, he was deployed in Afghanistan. He was a corpsman, Navy corpsman, stationed with Marines in Afghanistan. And he was, he has seen some awful things. And when he came home, I couldn't understand why he didn't just go into EMT or something like that, because, he's trained for that. But he's like, Mom, I don't ever want to see
that again.
I don't want to see any blood. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want anyone's life to depend on me. I just can't ever do it again. So
right. And
that's understandable.
And I understand that as well. My husband being a combat veteran Marine, he wasn't a medic, but he was infantry. So we have and our good friend who was the fireman, who said, well, why doesn't he just, why doesn't he come out and do the fire training? And I think that he doesn't want to see that again.
Right.
He saw it in Iraq and 2003 Iraq, and he doesn't want to see it again.
So they had to undergo extensive counseling and PTS training and all of that. But so while he's in prison, since then, he's got a very positive attitude. He was denied parole in 2013, but he's up for parole again in September 2021. So as of today, the day that we're recording, he has served 18 years, 6 months, and 19 days. Like I said, a few of his siblings have forgiven him, but, one of them has not. He has been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And lastly, the family understands why people are fascinated with this. They understand the fascination with this murder. And I kind of think that maybe they might be into true crime too, just based on some things that I've seen when I did my research. They don't think he'll ever be granted parole because his letters to the judge are bizarre, and they believe that he's getting the best treatment where he is. He's getting the best treatment for his mental state where he is in prison. So, hopefully he won't get out. Anyway, guys, that's my murder for today. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's murder. We really appreciate our passion with you. We thank you for your support. If you'd like to support us even further monetarily, please donate to us on Patreon. You can also just subscribe to our podcast if you can't afford it. Give us a 5-star rating. That's good too. While you're there, leave us a comment about absolutely anything. Your subscription and ratings are essential to our success, and they help push us up the charts. You can do this on your favorite platform. And for more information, links to our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, visit our website at itwasn'tmetruecrime.com.
Thank you, Mercedes. We are so grateful to spend our time together and share our murderous stories. Thank you again so much for listening to us and supporting us. We would like to thank our Patreon supporters as well. They are the extra. You too can become one of our beloved patrons by supporting us at patreon.com/itwasn'tmepod. Subscribe to our podcast and listen to us and give us a 5-star rating. And thank you again. And remember,
it wasn't me.